What's up, YouTube? My name is Rob Guillory, and this is my YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. The purpose of this channel is to encourage, inspire, and give insight into what can be sort of a crazy-making industry. Of course, as always, I am talking about the comic book industry. So today is going to be sort of a special episode. This is going to be our very first Q&A episode, which is a huge deal. As I've said several times on this show, my goal for this was to make an asset for myself about 20 years ago. To make a resource for young creators who had tons of questions. And you guys have shown up, which blows me away. I've been getting in comments, messages from you guys. Thank you for sending those. And I just want to spend some time today digging right into that and just, answering anything you got. So please keep sending those in. I want to keep digging into those periodically. And, bear with me because this is going to be not nearly as clean as I usually do on this show. I like to keep things pretty succinct. So I'm kind of flying without a net today. So bear with me, but let's dig right into those questions. All right, question number 1 comes from @JesseLee138. What is something that you started doing at the start of this comic journey that you have grown out of? That is a great question. Immediately, the first thing that pops into mind is exactly how I handle my my workflow. So in the early days, when I was in my mid-20s, just starting out this comic thing, I used to just shackle myself to my drawing desk for 14 hours a day. And I used to think that was being productive. And I did get some things done. But the older I've gotten, the more I've seen that I can probably get more work done, more real quality work done in 4 to 6 hours a day than I was getting done in 12 to 14 hours. Just because I think my focus wasn't nearly, when you're shackled to your desk, not moving, for me at least, the blood's not flowing. My mind's not nearly as happy, to be honest with you. And I love drawing. I love being in my office, but I've been taking way more time away from it just to kind of like go outside, get in the sun, do a little exercise and whatnot, get in the gym. I think a lot of that stuff has actually made me more productive in less time than I was in the early days. So that's a big change I've made. And I think I've been seeing more and more comic creators make changes like that. There seems like there's way more sensitivity in realizing that, a lot of the comic guys that we looked up to, when they get down to their 70s and their 80s, physically, they're not in fantastic shape. And so I think there's way more awareness to physical health and, even mental health than there was back when I was getting started. So that's a good thing. Next question comes from @MatthewWoods6719. Hi, Rob. As an experienced comic artist, how important is using reference for inspiration/realism for your art? It's pretty important. Even for a guy like me that does cartoony work, a lot of my stuff is still grounded in reality. So I usually have a lot of reference stuff hanging around, just references for buildings, animals. I have anatomy books laying around. Just because you have a cartoony style, you still have to have a foundation in what's real, because it still needs to be at least somewhat believable to the viewer. So yeah, it's pretty important. I have a lot of reference kind of hanging around, but at the same time, I'm not one of these guys that is drawing directly from the reference. I'm using it as a foundation to kind of to warp and build upon. I'm not I can't have reference just on my desk because it'll sort of overwhelm and confuse my art, and I'll get stuck trying to draw what I see. And that's sort of the trick for a guy like me who's doing a cartoony thing, is you want it to be recognizable as a real thing, but you also want to be able to take it and stretch it beyond what's believable. So that may be confusing, but yes, I use lots of reference. It's very important, but I'm also not shackled to it, and I go beyond it. Next question comes from @ZNeighbors. How do you know what the perfect length of your project should be? I find myself wondering how to achieve a perfect middle ground of length for my own project. I keep having new ideas for the project, but feel like I am putting too much into it. I feel it would just drone on and would muddle the bits I feel best about. Any advice or thoughts into how you trim the fat or extend your stories would give me great insight. This is a fantastic question. So let's look at a book like Farmhand. Farmhand, of course, is the book I'm working on at the moment. It's going to end up being about 26 issues. When I started making Farmhand back in 2017, I knew that it was going to be a longer story purely because, some of it was environmental. Some of it was because I was coming off of Chew. Chew was a little over 60 issues. So I felt that 30 issues would be supported, the industry would support 30 issues. Of course, the industry has changed substantially. So some of it was, industry considerations. I had to think from a business perspective, do I think people will hang around for 30 issues? So that was part of it. Also, some of it was simply because I knew I had all these characters. I had this big story, this big family drama, and I really wanted to make it longer. I knew that 5 issues would not be sufficient. I knew 10 wouldn't work. 15 seemed a little short. So I aimed for 30, and part of that was because I had a mental map of what the story looked like. I knew what the beginning was, the middle, and the end, and I knew about how long it would be. So based on that outline, I was able to construct a path and a vision for 30 issues. Now, this actually shifted mid-stride, because after I wrote after I got into the 4th arc of Farmhand, so that's issues 16 through 20, when I got to that point, I realized that I didn't need another 10 issues after that. It didn't need to be 30 issues. So I basically called an audible mid-stride and decided, you know what, I only need one more arc here to seal this story up. So I changed it. It's going to end up being 26 issues. But basically, that's a long-winded story to basically summarize this one point. You need to plan your story. You need a map. You need set milestones. I want this to happen in issue 1. This needs to happen in issue 5, issue 10, issue 15. And you need to hit that. And you need to know your beginning, your middle, and your end. Now that doesn't mean that you have to be shackled to every detail of the story and map it all out, like scene by scene, issue by issue, from the very beginning. I don't think you need to do that. With Chew and with Farmhand, we had roadmaps. Like I said, we had little milestones along the way, but we also let there be enough flexibility to be able to just kind of have creative spontaneity. So you need to plan this stuff out ahead of time, and I think that will help you kind of map exactly how long this thing needs to be. If you feel that it's droning on, there's a pretty good chance the reader's going to feel the exact same way. So map it out. And also take into consideration, like I said, some industry considerations as well. Think about, if you're going to be self-publishing this, then it can be as long as you want. But if it's going to go to, say, a Boom Studios, chances are they're going to want it to be about 5 issues. If you're going to take it to Image, again, that's kind of up to you how long you want to take it. You want to make it to be. So there are industry business considerations in that decision as well. But either way, it's totally going to be up to you. But you have to know what your story is ahead of time to make that decision. So draw a story map. I'm going to be doing some episodes about that as well. But start just laying out little touchstones along the way in the story so that you can start to see how long this thing needs to be. Next question comes from @SkipEdwardsArt. When you're laying a page out, what questions do you ask yourself to convey the story the best way possible? See, I think you totally nailed it right off the bat. You need to focus on conveying the story. That should always be the first priority. For me, that is completely what I'm going for. So the first thing I look at is I'll read through the script, then I will go back and I'll basically write on the page which panels are the most important to the actual story. So I'm looking for specific story moments and character moments. And basically, I'm also looking for action scenes, things that are going to be just straight up visually cool and visually important to the book that I think I'll enjoy drawing, that I think the audience will enjoy. So that's those two things I'm kind of balancing. What is going to be fun for me to draw that I think the audience will enjoy, but also what are crucial story moments, character moments, maybe not action, maybe it's just a quiet moment of emotion on a character's face. I want to highlight those moments first. And the more important I feel those moments are, the bigger they are on the page. And everything else kind of goes down from there. So typically the smaller the panel, they're usually like the little in between things. They're like dialogue between two characters, or they're just little moments of action. But so that is basically what I'm looking for. What is the most important thing to the story in this moment? And then I'll make that larger, and then I'll kind of look at the page. I'm looking at panel counts. I'm looking at flow. I don't want to stack panels too close together. I want everything to feel spacious. The kind of the tension of composing a comic book page is this duality. You have all these panels. Every panel is important. Every panel needs to be aesthetically pleasing on its own, but it also needs to come together to work as a cohesive whole. So it's a very challenging thing, but basically I think you nailed it. I think your priority is completely in the right place. You're focused on conveying the story. What is the most important to the actual story? And I think that is the veil. That is what I look through, the lens I look through when I'm composing a story. The more important it is to the story, the bigger the panel is on the page. Next question comes from @MooseBumps, who wants to know about my process of making up such wonderful creatures like Gumbo and the Chogs. Well, anytime I'm creating a character, or especially a creature, I have to focus on what their role in the overall story is going to be. So for the Chogs and for the Gumbo character, both of those are supposed to be comic relief in the middle of some really dark stories. So I'm focusing on straight up cuteness. The goofier, the better. Which I probably am drawing from my background in animation. I grew up with Tom and Jerry. I grew up with Looney Tunes and Flintstones and all that kind of stuff. So I'm absolutely drawing from all that background influence to create these kind of elastic, goofy, gross characters that are supposed to balance the story in an interesting way. And honestly, I have, as I've mentioned many times on the show, I have 3 young kids, so I have plushes and stuffed animals all over the place. So anytime I'm trying to create one of these comic relief animal characters, I'm absolutely drawing from all of that influences, all these stuffed animals all over my floor. I'm drawing from all that stuff and putting that all into that character's design. Last question comes from Anila Kumar 9946. How can one get better at art if they are a non-art student and have very little free time on their hands throughout the day? Yeah, that's tough. So the first thing I think you're going to need to do is you're going to need to figure out if you really have no free time, or if there is free time but you're just losing it because it's slipping through the cracks. Nowadays with phones and social media and that sort of thing, it's really easy to lose time and not know where it went. So the first thing I would do is, if you have an iPhone, I'm sure Android has some kind of similar app, I would go to your screen time app and start looking at how often you're on your phone. Where is the time going? Are you losing a bunch of time to social media, Instagram, YouTube, or whatever? Because chances are there's probably 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there that you could take back and then dedicate to the craft. If the phone is not your problem, then that's going to be trickier, because that means if you're really that passionate about digging into the art thing, you're going to have to sacrifice some stuff to make the time to do it. This is the boat that I was in when I was in college. I sacrificed a lot. I sacrificed a lot of my social life. I didn't go out as much. So if I had friends calling, asking me to go out, chances are I was probably going to be working at home, working on a portfolio, working on new art, that sort of thing. So you're going to have to figure out really where your priorities are. If you really want to dig into this comic thing, dig into the art thing in general, you're just going to have to make the time, and you're going to have to cut some things. You're going to have to trim some things to dedicate the time necessary to build your skills. And if you're not an art student, there's probably no better time. There's a wealth of resources out there on the internet that you could dig into to learn the craft. Whatever your art is, chances are there is someone on YouTube who is making it, and those resources are totally free. So I think if you want to pick this up and you're not an art student, I don't think that really matters, to be honest with you. I think you could dig in pretty well online, try to connect with some creators that are making what you want to make. The thing I've learned from my career is that more often than not, creators are pretty open to help. There were tons of creators I used to email back in the day, and they were always open to to look at my work and get feedback and that sort of thing. So I would start tapping. I start tapping that web access like you are right now. You're emailing, you're sending comments to me, and I'm responding to you. Start doing that more with creatives until you get to a place where you're comfortable with your art and you can start going to shows. If you are looking at Comic-Cons are a great place to connect with creators and to get feedback there as well. So, but yeah, that first step is going to be trying to figure out where is the time, because I'm almost positive that time is going to be there somewhere. You just have to find it. All right, so that brings us to the end of our very first Q&A episode. I thank you guys again for sending in the comments, sending in the questions. Again, this is exactly what this channel is for. Please keep sending them in down in the comments section, because I want to do this again from time to time. I think it's really cool to be able to kind of tap just some of the practical experience I've had over the years in a way that's beneficial to you guys, hopefully. Like, share, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Links are down in the description. And I'll check you guys out next time. Later.